Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're here with local singer-songwriter Chris Hludzik. Chris, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And, alright, let's get started. You've been a part of the local music scene for a very long time, writing and playing music. What initially inspired you to play music?
When I was in high school, I used to write short stories and poems. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be an author, specifically. And but I loved music, too. And I kind of got out of the poetry writing phase, and I was writing longer poems, but they weren't poem length, but they weren't short story length. They either fell somewhere in between or they were shorter. So I called them songs. They were just really lyrics, but they weren't songs yet because I didn't have any music. I didn't know how to write music or anything, but I loved music, so I called them songs. Then years later, I picked up a guitar when I was about 17. I started playing guitar, taught myself, and I took these words, these so-called songs, and actually turned them into songs. And that was how I got started out.
Very good. What was the first instrument you actually learned to play?
The first instrument I learned to play was the guitar. I dabbled around with other things in the beginning, like mandolin and stuff like that. I really didn't, I really wasn't too good at it. It really wasn't that much of a songwriting tool. The guitar was more of a songwriting tool for me. Then I learned how to play the bass. But yeah, the guitar was the first one I learned how to play.
Okay. What were some of your earlier musical projects?
The first band I was in was called the Pheromones. And I know there's about like 20 bands out there with that name right now, but that was a friend of mine from high school, Joe Myers. He played drums, and then two other guys on guitar, and I played bass. And we were kind of like, it was like kind of like Soundgarden, Nirvana kind of stuff. That lasted that spring and summer of that year. That was 2003. Then after that, me and the guitar player and his brother formed a band called Electric Heart, and that was later in that year. And we did an album called Rantin' and Scranton. I came up with that title, and it didn't do anything. The project disbanded before anything could really be done. Then I dabbled around and playing with people, collaborating with people. I recorded a lot. I recorded a lot of groups. I recorded a group called White Noise of the Big Bang, who are now disbanded. I just did a lot of recording. I worked at a recording store. I worked at Sound Investments Recording Studio in Scranton, when it was in Scranton still. And that was really what the bulk of my time was given to in those couple of years. But during that time, I was still writing my own stuff and everything. Then in 2006, I had a project with an old friend of mine, Brian Brophy, and we call ourselves the Latter-day Saints, and we released an album called As We Speak. And that project disbanded shortly after because he wanted to focus on his solo stuff, and he got involved in another group. And so after that, that's when I finally said, okay, I'm going to do my solo thing, and that's what I've been doing.
Wow. So, you recently released your debut solo album, Yours in Rock, which was completely recorded, played, and released by you, with the exception of some few guest musicians.
Yes.
Could you tell me a little bit about that album?
Yeah, Yours in Rock was just basically, as an album, it really, how can I say this? It's more of a collection of songs than it is an album. I mean, it works good as an album, but basically what Yours in Rock is, it's a collection of songs I had written and recorded over the years, and that were actually good enough to be released. I had a lot of songs, but I picked the ones that were really the cream of the crop for Yours in Rock, and the recordings range from, there's one song on there that was done on my 4-track cassette recorder, and most of it was done on my 8-track reel-to-reel recorder, and then there were a couple songs that were done at Sound Investments. So I mean, it's just a variety of environments I recorded in, a variety of people I recorded it with, and for how different kind of each of the tracks are from one another, it's pretty cohesive, I think, as an album.
So this album, it was released digitally through iTunes. How do you feel about digital downloads? I mean, it's really a sign of the times. More and more commerce with music is going through iTunes and digital download services. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a double-edged sword. It's good in a way and it's bad in a way. It's good in a way because it's good for a guy like me, you know, that I can just pay like a one-time setup fee to iTunes and get my album on there and, you know, have it sold throughout the world. But it sucks because, you know, I'm an old school, you know, music guy. I like to buy the album. I like to have the physical package. I like to look at the artwork and the liner notes and all that. And plus the sound quality is so much better on a CD than it is on an MP3, but the kids nowadays don't know the difference, and they probably never will because it's changing so fast that there's going to be no more CDs anymore. I mean, that's the way it's looking anyway, but I mean, the digital download thing isn't bad. I mean, it doesn't hurt me, and I mean, my album's available on iTunes, but if anybody does want like a CD copy, they can just you know, hit me up with a message on my MySpace, and I could send them a copy of the album like that if they prefer it, the better sound quality. But I mean, I don't mind it, but I don't really care for it either. So.